Welcome to the Everything Yachting YouTube channel. Our goal is to help yacht buyers, yacht owners, and yacht sellers through interesting, educational, and informative discussions on topics that are anything and everything yachting related. Hello, and thanks for joining us today. I'm here with some of my friends, Rod Silva and Captain Tad. Captain Tad, thanks for joining us. We invited you on our last video that we made. You took no time at all to get back to us, so we appreciate that. I know you got a busy schedule. You're moving yachts up and down the East Coast into the Bahamas, so thanks for being here today. And what we'd like to discuss is just generally our experiences. I've known Tad for, let me think, I probably met you in 2006, 2007.
I believe so.
Shortly after I met Rod Silver here. We've been talking about boats ever since. We've run boats together. We've done boat shows. We've done orientations. You've helped me out. I've helped you out. We've done a lot of stuff together. So you're kind of one of the guys with some serious miles under their belt on these Marlow Explorers because of, you know, the opportunities that you've created for yourself or we've networked together to create. I'll just start with, where have you been on a Marlow? North, south, east, west? You know, what's the outer boundaries here so that the people who might be watching who are interested in, hey, I'm selling my business and I really want to have a trawler. I'm not sure what I want yet. So, you know, I know I want to go here. I just want to make sure that maybe some of their dreams are relevant to some of your experiences and they can relate and learn from what we're going to discuss today. We're here to discuss anything yachting, everything yachting. So it doesn't really, there's nothing off limits. Let's just figure out where the conversation takes us, how long it takes. I hope you guys enjoy it.
Well, thank you, Eric. I appreciate the invitation. Like you said, I've enjoyed our relationship that we've had since 2005. It's been a fun time, and I have been up and down the East Coast, a lot. So anywhere from the Canadian border down to the Caribbean, St. Thomas, St. John's, Martinique, any of the islands down in the Caribbean. Lots of time out in the Bahamas. Also up through the Erie Canal system into the Great Lakes, and up the other side, up the Tom Bigby into the Tennessee River, the Ohio River, and Mississippi River. So all of that on Marlows.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about the furthest north. What were you on? Why were you there?
I was on a Marlow Explorer exploring Maine. So we did an intensive exploration, if you would, of Maine and going out east. We based out of Portland, and we went all the way out to the U.S. border because the owner wanted to get in the tender right across the border, have a beer in his tender, and then get back on the boat and go the other way.
Okay. What size boat?
That was a 97.
Oh, okay. So you're up there in 97.
That was a big one. Yes.
Okay. So you had ballpark, how many people, ballpark, how many crew?
It was me and the owner and his wife. So it was three of us on the 97.
And how experienced of yachtsmen and women were they to support you in your mission to run a 100-foot boat? Theoretically, I assume you started in Florida and ended up one point crossing over to Canada.
Right.
What value did they bring to the table crew-wise? Because that's a big boat, right?
That is a big boat. It is a big boat. They were very willing to jump in and do anything that I requested. When it came to the boat, they deferred to me completely as far as, okay, what do you need us to do? They were very competent at wheel watches, at being able to be a watch stander, take the wheel, and they were also terrific at line handling and fenders. So they were very experienced in that side of it. So they would assist with that, but the boat also had a yacht controller, so it had a remote. So much of it was single-handed, if you would.
Did it have pop-out wing stations as well?
It did.
And what did you find percentage-wise ballpark? Were you usually on that? I try not to be brand specific, right? Because some people love yacht controller. Some people love dock rate.
I was on the remote 100% of the time.
Most of the time?
100% of the time. Okay. I never used the wing stations.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. The sight lines, the ability to move around, to give direction without having to yell or scream or have headphones or remote radios or any of that kind of stuff. It's super easy for us to be able to communicate that way. If I could walk around the upper deck back and forth or even come down and handle lines and fenders myself. Okay.
So you've gone all the way crossing the border to Canada.
Yep.
How far south?
Down to the Caribbean.
Okay.
St. John's, is all, St. Thomas, basing out of St. Thomas and then going over to St. John's, owners like to do snorkeling and all of that.
And what size? How many people? How many crew on that one?
That was a 70,
Okay.
and that was myself, a mate, and the owners would come and go.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And most of the time cruising north-south, right? Just oversimplifying the conversation, because I don't know if I'm talking to a husband and wife that thinks a 49 Marlow is huge and out of their range, or if I'm talking to somebody who thinks a new 88 is too small and they want something bigger. So I'm
Sure.
trying to be general in it just for the education and
Sure.
conversation purposes. So you said north, you said south. What was the general mission on both of those to get from one to the other speed wise, if you were just to talk averages, right? So I know some people really feel conservative, and 5 knots is fast in their sailboat, so 7 knots in a Marlow is really fast, where some people might be coming out of a sport fish where they run 33 knots all the time, so 27 knots might be slow to them. So what would you say your average is in your total north-south commutes?
Most of the people are looking just to get the boat from one location to the next. So when I come on board, I'm normally the delivery guy moving the boat. So we're normally between 18 and 20 knots. And from, South Florida, whether it be the West Coast or the East Coast, up to, we'll call it Newport, Rhode Island, is about 8 days. And that's traveling at about 200 miles, 220 miles a day. You want to go 9 knots? We can do that. Just double it. We're going to be 16 days to 20 days. A lot of the people will do a combination thereof, which means that, okay, I get on the boat, I'll take the boat to somewhere, spectacular. All right, we're in Miami, great, we spent the weekend there. Take your time and get up to Charleston and we'll meet you there. And then we come into Charleston and we spend, probably a week cruising around that, southeast part of the coast. And then they'll leave and I'll take the boat on up to, say, Norfolk, or start to get into Annapolis, Cape May, Atlantic City, New York City, that kind of stuff. Most people want to arrive in New York City. So most of the time it's Cape May, Norfolk, or Atlantic City.
So north-south, right? We got parameters.
Right.
In between, secret spots, favorite spots, best holiday spots, like where are your bucket list locations? Because maybe someone's talking about this trip 3 years from now.
Sure.
And they don't have the boat yet. They don't know where they want to go. They got to figure out the boat purchase and reservation process to be in these spots.
Right.
So what are your top 5?
Yeah, top 5 would be Charleston, for sure. A great food city, great nautical location, easy to cruise around. The ICW south of Charleston is great cruising ground between Charleston and Hilton Head. So that is easy, half a day at 9 knots in the ICW. So easy back and forth between Hilton Head and there. So lots of great places with Beaufort, South Carolina, and Charleston, Hilton Head Island. All of that would be kind of considered one for me. Charleston is a definite. You're definitely going to want to spend, 2 nights. The standing joke on the East Coast with all yacht captains, if something's going to break, it's going to break in Charleston. Whether it broke or not, it's broke in Charleston. So we get an extra night or 2 in Charleston, because it is a terrific place to spend. Also, it's very handy because there's an airport right there in Charleston. Easy cruise switch. So my next one after that, starting to head north, would be Beaufort, North Carolina. Not easy to get in and out to with an airplane, but a great sleepy little community, very charming southern town, southern hospitality, really a great place to spend a couple of nights there. Norfolk, Virginia, will speak for itself. I mean, it's largest Navy base on the East Coast, all kinds of great restaurants, bustling downtown place to stay. There's a waterside marina there that is an entertainment complex. It has 5 restaurants attached to the dock, a nautical museum that has a World War II era battleship, another great spot to go to. Going north from there to Annapolis, again, right there next to the Navy Academy, the Naval Academy. There we go. So the Navy Academy in Annapolis itself, a great stop. New York City is it's so picturesque. Pulling in under the Verrazzano's Bridge, there sits the Statue of Liberty. Downtown Manhattan, I normally stay right across in Jersey City in a place called Liberty Landings. Great marina, easy access to the city. Very picturesque. And then if I go a little further north from there, Newport, Rhode Island.
Okay, so some great recommendations, great spots there. How about the holiday spots? Where do you want to be? Where do you not want to be?
Right. So normally where I like to be for holidays, Nantucket is unbelievable for 4th of July.
My favorite 4th of July
4th of
ever
July
have been in
is
Nantucket.
unbelievable in Nantucket. So, but again, you will need to make reservations. They open typically the very first weekend in January for those reservations. You need to be standing by the computer hitting send at that particular time because it's very difficult reservation to get. But they do have a mooring field. So, they have a nice mooring system out there. So that's also an option. Great launch that comes out and picks you up. So that's an unbelievable spot to be in. I really like being up in Maine for Labor Day, which is like their last weekend before they start pulling docks. So whether it's Portland or whether it's Booth Bay or Bar Harbor, any one of those three places all the way up in Maine for Labor Day. It's late season. Everyone's already left. All the crowds are gone. The shops are, getting rid of any of their inventory, but you've got, lots of things to go see and do. Starting to get a chill in the air, but it's not cold yet. After that first weekend in September, Labor Day weekend, after that, you need to start coming back south because they actually start pulling the docks out of the water. So, they're turning away reservations, not because they're full, but because they don't have docks anymore. So they've already started pulling those out of the water. As I start to head back south, I normally like to try to get down past Cape Hatteras, before December 1, because it starts to get cold up north. So normally I'm looking for holidays. There's something special about being in Fort Lauderdale for the Christmas boat parade. This is a parade like none other. You're seeing, 140-foot yachts cruising by with Santa Claus and sleighs and bands, and
We had Brett Michaels singing to us when you were going by. Yeah,
it is a sight to behold for sure. So being there, and then New Year's Eve, I absolutely love the Atlantis over in Nassau.
I've not been there for that.
Sitting in the harbor at Atlantis, they do fireworks off the top of the hotel.
Oh, yeah. And
you are literally under the firework canopy. It feels like they are right there. You feel heat coming from the fireworks.
Right.
It's quite the party.
That's really cool.
It is quite the party.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So on our last episode, Rod and I talked about how we got into the industry. All right. Would you be willing to share how you got into this lovely industry that keeps us all busy, entertained, having fun?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I grew up in Clearwater, Florida. So I kind of grew up, my parents always had a boat. So I grew up as that nagging little kid that always asked his father, can I drive now? Can I drive now? So I always enjoyed driving stuff and getting into stuff. And, my father trying to deter me said, oh, well, if you're going to drive it, you need to know how to work on it. You've got to be able to understand what makes a boat work. How is it different from driving anything else? The riding lawnmower. How's it different from, driving a car? So he really kind of, empowered that inquisitive knowledge to understand how something worked to be allowed to drive the boat.
I'm doing that right now with my 17-year-old son. And my current strategy that's working best, because nobody likes to be told what to do,
right?
Especially when you're 17 as your dad,
sure.
Right? So what I do is I kind of give him enough rope so that I can see some smoke coming out of his ears,
right.
And then I try to get involved before he breaks something.
Right.
What did your dad do?
Well,
because I'm looking for advice.
No, he was the exact same way. He I would start going, oh well, this is this, and so he basically, it was more of a vocabulary and communicating to him how something worked. And then, that kind of led itself into understanding how to fix it, how to work on it, what makes it go. Can you fix it yourself? Is it something you can do? So, in boat language, our boat was always at a high and dry. So the forklift would come and lift it out and put it on a rack. And then, the game is let's talk about a propeller and how this propeller makes the boat go forward. Is this a right-handed or a left-handed propeller? I don't know. What does that mean? So then understanding what that meant and how a propeller worked, how the outdrive on this IO actually worked. And when it turned, the thrust went this way. So that's how you steer. When you turn the wheel this way, it goes. So making sure that I understood and then could communicate that back to my dad was the most important part for him. Because if I could communicate it to him, Even didn't matter how I communicated. Didn't matter if I used the same language,
right.
but I had to be able to communicate it. And that's what really got me so intrigued in stuff, nautical, how this worked, how the boat interacted, what was what was the chime on a boat, what was that for, the whole design, how this made it.
I want to take that and pin it because I want you to keep going, but I'm going to write down what type of captain are you? Because a lot of times people ask me, hey, I want to buy this 60-foot yacht. Okay. I'll ask, what experience do you have? Because, the conversation's going that they're going to be an owner operator.
Sure.
So they'll say, I've run a 30-foot as captain in charge. Well, okay, now we got a big jump. So maybe we're going to need to get a captain, right? Maybe you're going to get qualified for it, depending upon where you're keeping it. All those variables that we help
Sure.
a new buyer work through in the boat purchase process. And then the light goes on their head and they go, okay, I want a captain for a period of time. So the question comes up, how much and what can they do? So at some point in time in this conversation, I'd like you to tell us what type of a captain you are. Because when I explain this to owners, I'll explain maybe you got a captain who only wants to run the boat. Maybe you got a captain who doesn't mind washing the boat. Maybe you got a captain who prefers to do the varnish. Maybe he prefers to do oil changes, generator changes, whatever it is, right? I try to equate what they provide for the owner as a comparison to what they're asking for compensation, because if they are doing oil changes and varnish, for example, they're saving you money elsewhere.
Sure.
Not everybody works that way.
Right.
You've been super successful. Like, it's really hard to get you on short notice to get on a boat because you're already on someone else's boat.
Right.
So you're doing stuff right. Just like to know how you define yourself in that as a pin for what type of captain are you.
Okay.
As you're explaining how you started and where you are today.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So, that led itself into always liking to run boats and all of that stuff. I go away to college to play football and then come back from college, and my parents owned a ballroom dance studio. So my dad, kicked the sofa one day and said, hey, you're breathing my air. And I said, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do. And he said, you need to come into the dance studio. I had been dancing my whole life since my parents owned the studio. I grew up ballroom dancing in a studio. So I started teaching ballroom dancing. Well, becoming a ballroom dance instructor is like becoming a hairdresser. It takes a long time to develop a skill and attract clients. So in the interim, I started going down to the commercial fishing docks down in Clearwater Beach because I had friends who had graduated high school and started working on commercial fishing boats. And I started going out as a mate on commercial fishing boats, day boats, going out half day, full day fishing trips. And I started going out helping wash down and all of that stuff. And commercial fishing captains on those kind of boats, typically when they get back to the dock, they're done. So this owner had 3 boats, so there were 3 boats tied there together. And if they had a particularly good day or a particularly bad day, all 3 captains would get in one wheelhouse, start drinking beer and telling stories. And the owner happened to walk down the dock one day and said, hey, this boat needs to get fueled. It's got to turn around and go out the first thing, tomorrow. He hollered up to the wheelhouse, and all 3 captains walk out with a beer in their hand and start saying, oh, well, what's up? And he said, this boat needs to get fueled. Well, my best friend was the mate on the boat, and I was just there for giggles. And he said, well, you guys need to take this boat, go over to the fuel dock and fuel it. And my mate was like, oh, well, here, let Tad run it. Tad, I've always gone out with him and his parents. So I was like, okay, great. So I jumped on it and took it to the fuel dock.
How old do you figure you were?
I was 22.
And what size boat?
It was probably a 60-foot, twin engine. I had been on a couple of, I'd gone out with the captains. I had played with it around the docks and stuff, but I was always good with spatial awareness. So that part was okay. So I took it around the fuel dock, fueled it, brought it back and put it in the slip. Okay. The owner happened to see all of that. And he says, you're pretty good at that. I know that you're working for your parents, but on the weekends, are you real busy? And I said, no. He says, well, I'll pay for you to go get your captain's license if you'll be my relief captain on the weekends. I went, okay. Sounds good. I just got out of college, so taking tests wasn't any big deal. So I went, great. So I got my captain's license really early on. And then, the rest was history. I did a couple of times relief captain stuff, but nothing really to speak of. It was just, I think I was the weapon because he paid all of his employees on Thursday in hopes that they would show up to work by Saturday. So
And if you don't, Captain Tad's gonna have your job.
that's right. So I think that I was I've already got somebody standing by,
Right,
so I think that was, really the reason for it. But, that being said, I always kept my captain's license active. I was just, doing stuff. But, then the dance world kind of took off, and, that part of life really, really went crazy. And so, fast forward 15 years later, I was at the dance studio. One of our clients, a couple that was taking lessons, her husband suddenly passed away. When he passed away, she was distraught about what she was going to do. They had a 55-foot Californian, a motor yacht, had this 55-foot yacht. She had no clue how to use it. And she says, I want to take my friends out, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, hey, I'm a captain. So, I had, run a couple of sport fish boats, in the interim, doing some offshore fishing tournaments, that kind of stuff. So this was the first big boat that I was going to be in charge of. So I started running that boat, every weekend for a couple of years. Just kind of doing little day trips, nothing big, just kind of day trips back and forth. And then, we were cruising down to the Sarasota Yacht Club one day from St. Pete, and there was a Marlow Explorer that was pulling out of Longboat Key moorings, and the owner said, "That's a beautiful looking boat." The owner
They sure are pretty.
yeah, well, I mean, she really enjoyed the classic look of a Marlow.
Right.
That looks like a boat. That looks like a yacht. Loved the look of it. That was it. Loved the look of it. Okay, we go to the Sarasota Yacht Club, spend the night, come back the next day. 3 weeks later, we cruise that same 55 Californian down to Bradenton Yacht Club. We're sitting at Bradenton Yacht Club, and there pulls in a brand new 78-foot Marlow being commissioned for their new owners. And we walked by it a couple of times, going to dinner or lunch with friends, all of that kind of stuff. The owner was like, I really do like that boat. That looks great. And I was like, yeah. And over the years, the owner had made noise about, well, I think I need to get a new boat. The boat that she had at that point was 20 years old. And she's like, I'm going to get a new boat. But it was always just kind of a go and look and kick the tires, and never really decided on anything. Then 2 months later, we're going down to Sarasota Yacht Club. That same Marlow that came out of Longboat Key moorings was going into Sarasota Yacht Club. And she picked up the phone and called Marlow Marine and said, I'd like to come look at a boat. We came and looked at a 70-foot Marlow, and 10 days later, she owned it.
Wow. So you bought the first one used?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Because this was not an owner that was very patient. So, if she saw something that she wanted it now. And, telling her that you were going to have to wait for 2 years for something wasn't in the cards.
Yeah.
What year was that?
2006.
All right. So the reason why I ask is, first of all, thank you again for being here.
Yeah, of course.
I think we go back to right around that time. I think I met you when you were working with that owner towards the tail end of that, when they owned that 70.
Uh-huh.
Eventually, they moved up to a bigger boat.
Right.
And a couple of things that I want to bring up is you have a really cool story about how you used to run that boat. Basically, single-handedly ran the boat, and
Sure.
you towed center console.
28-foot center console.
If
yeah.
you can talk about that, and also one of the things I really admire about you, and that a lot of the clients that I've worked with that have worked with you as well, one of the single biggest things, the feedback that I get from them is that there's a lot of really good captains out there. A lot of people that can run the boat from point A to point B. They can wash the boat and do all this. But something that's very unique about you is that you have this ability to teach everybody how to run a boat, whether it's a husband and a wife or a crew, and you explain to them how important it is for anybody that is aboard that boat, that cruises it often, to have the ability of running that boat, even if it's running it back to the dock for safety purposes. So if you can just touch on those two things, I think
Sure.
a lot of people would appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why the owner was so attracted to Marlows, as we talked about before, was the classic look of the Marlow, that it looked like a yacht. This was a classic from day one, and the boat that the owners had at that time was 20 years old and definitely showing its age. If you walk into some particular yachts, if they're 5 years old, you feel like you needed to do a refit. The first boat that this owner bought was 4 years old and walked on it, and it looked brand new, like the day it was built. It didn't look dated. It didn't look old. It looked classic, but you could see all the modern touches, the fit and finish, which is really what attracted the owner to Marlow in particular, because 5 years down the road, they weren't going to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in a complete refit on the inside, so it looked pretty, so it looked modern. It was already done. So that was really what kind of drew them to that, as well as the ease of handling the boat. The fact that it had, a bow thruster and a stern thruster. The fact that it had a remote. The fact that the boat could be handled easily by one person, which was a key element, because as these owners got older, they already sensed their inability to be able to handle certain tasks on the boat.
Or don't want to anymore.
Or don't want to. Yeah. That's just not what I want to do anymore.
Who jumps up and down at 6 o'clock at night going, I get to wash the boat. We just arrived.
That's right. Exactly.
Some of the owners don't do that.
That's right. So it was very important to these owners that, anything that we did on the boat was able to be accomplished by one person. And if that was going to be me, I was the one that said, okay, this can be handled by one person. I can have somebody with a pair of eyes that can watch the tender being towed. I can have monitors all over money wasn't the object. It was, can it be handled by one person? If it can be handled by one person, I don't care. You can put a monitor wherever you want it.
Now, Rod and I know part of the story, so
Sure.
we know where this goes. So at some point in time, you're the captain with a missus on a 70 Marlow. And then at some point in time, you progress to being the captain with the same, owner missus on the boat. But now you've got some situations or circumstances that cause you to have a smart car on the top aft deck of that 70.
Right.
I don't know if it was mobility related or you wanted an adventure when you got to port. And you also towed a 27, 28 foot center console behind you.
Correct.
Again, without, 5 crew members aboard.
Correct.
So why did you go from the 70 to the 78? And why did you have all that stuff? Because I'll tell you, when I was new in the industry, when we first met you, you were a rock star and could do stuff that I couldn't comprehend. And you've taught me a lot. So I appreciate that. And thank you for
of course.
what you've taught me, what I've passed on to owners, what you passed on to owners. So what was the need and reasons why, and how did you do it?
So for all the toys, for all the stuff, the owner loved the ability to have it the way that they wanted it at that particular time. And the mobility, the having the adventure to go wherever you wanted to.
We'll put a picture up of this just so everybody knows. We
Right.
get a picture. I don't know if you're towing the boat at the same time, but you get a 78 Marlow. I'm not kidding. There's a smart car where the tender would go on the top.
Right.
You guys built that boat new, had some special requests. Obviously, Marlow
Sure.
was able to exceed
Sure.
expectations and do it. But tell us the reasons why, and
So,
we'll put some of this stuff up on the video so people can see what we're talking about.
When we started towing the 28-foot center console, we never used the tender at that point. The rib that we carried on the boat deck up top was not something that we used. We always used the 28-foot center console to run around, go restaurant hopping, wandering through neighborhoods, looking at houses, just exploring. That's what the owner liked to do. And so consequently, with that tender in tow, we never needed that one. We ended up with 2 Segways on the boat. So the little 2-wheelers that you can ride around. So rode the Segways around until the owner crashed one day into some diners at a sidewalk cafe, and
Mowing down.
There was Caesar salad everywhere. So that part, we were kind of like, okay, maybe this is a little too adventurous. Maybe we need to try something else. So we started looking at what's the viability of putting a golf cart, because at many docks that we would go to, the dock master would arrive to our slip in a golf cart. And so the owner was like, we should get a street legal golf cart. And I was like, not quite sure that the whole saltwater exposure, batteries, battery charger, all of that exposure is going to be good for us in a long-term sense. But, we started doing some exploring about how much does a smart car weigh. Come to find out, a smart car weighs about as much as a golf cart. Mm-hmm. So I was like, and it's the same dimensions. If somebody could drive a golf cart down the dock, I could drive that smart car down the dock. So
it's gonna be some serious. This was a while ago before like Instagram and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I bet you
there's some interesting
famous.
video of that because we cut a dowel rod the exact width of the smart car. And I learned this the hard way because the first time that I took the smart car off and it didn't fit down the dock, I was like, okay, note to self, we cut a dowel rod the exact size and I would walk it down the dock because if there happened to be a dock box or something that stuck out that I needed to either move because it was easy to move a hose or no, it couldn't be moved, then no, it was a no-go. So walk that down the dock and then, yes, you would, Marlow was kind enough to fabricate all of the lifting apparatus and the 4-wheel chalks and the 4-point harness to lift the thing and a super massive crane because we had to be able to lift it out over pilings and set it onto a commercial dock.
So was that part of your new build spec when you came into it?
It
okay.
was.
So you already had the 70. You're like, I want to make this cooler. What was the main reason for the new boat? I'm sure you had a list of what you wanted. Obviously, this was one of them.
This was one of them.
But what was the big reason?
The owner, is quite the character, if you would say, and had an unbelievable personality, and was oh well, wouldn't this be great? So we were out on each trip, and as you do, what I'd really like is could that be moved here? Could this be moved there? And the list started continuing to grow, and then it was, well, what if we ended up with a bigger boat? What kind of cool things could you put on it? And the owner sold a piece of property in Aspen, Colorado. And she had some family members who at that point, had a fit because this owner had sold this property and they were a little whiny to her about that this property, they thought that this was going to be in the family forever and that they were saving this property for them. And it really rubbed this owner the wrong way. She did not appreciate that. And so really the impetus to build a new boat was that day. That day, the owner came up and sat next to me and she looked at me and she says, I can't believe that they would be like this, and said, I'm going to build a new boat. And
she converted from maybe saving for somebody else or spending for herself. She already had a wish list. She already had needs.
Right.
There was benefit for her for doing it.
Right.
She already had a boat, so the 2-year wait wasn't a big deal.
That's correct.
And now we figured it out.
Yeah. Now she figured it out. She got frustrated and said, okay, fine, let's call Marlow and let's start a new build.
Right.
And I'm like, okay. So I had spent a lot of years with her on this 55-foot yacht. And it took a long time for her to decide to buy this, so how many lightly used.
On that 55, how many years were you on it?
I was with her for 10 years on that
10
55.
to 55. How long on the 70?
3.
Okay. And then how long on the 78 before she unfortunately passed?
Yeah, that was 4.
4. Okay.
4.
So like a lot of our clients, once you are comfortable with it, right? I own it. I'm comfortable with it. I like it. How much can I get for it? Okay, yeah, I'll have another one. Let's repeat this experience.
Sure.
And that's what you went through. I think our record, Rod, we talked about was what, 5? 6. One client with 6 different boats from us, from Marlow, over the years.
Sure.
Resale value helps with that equation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So she went through the whole process and put it in a limited liability corporation. The funnest story that she would always tell anybody who would come and sit on the back of the boat and have a drink with her is that the corporation name was DPMO, and DPMO stood for Don't Piss Mother Off. Because that's
how she ended up with a new boat.
That's how she ended up with a new boat.
I have told that story more than once.
She told me when we were in the build process, what's the wildest kind of stuff that you could think of? So on that boat, we came up with the wildest things that we could come up with at that particular time. The smart car on the back. We had a mister system put in the aft deck rail up on the hard top. You push a button and instant mist, a cooling mist, no matter what happened. The bar that we had, an air handler put in and vents put in front of every bar stool so that it could blow warm air or cold air. I mean,
so were you key involved in the build process?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so now we're talking to a client. You were key involved in the build process.
Sure.
You went through it. You already owned one. You had a wish list. Oversimplify. of 10 items or 100 items, however you want to do the math, you asked for how many did you get that were customer special? We were kind of like, hey, I wasn't really sure they were going to do that, but they did it. Just give me a percentage.
100%.
Wow.
Yeah, it was 100%. And it was, I mean, there was some pushback for sure, but it was, no, wanted a day head on the main deck. No, it had to happen. And, to that point, there was not such a thing. And
I was to say that I think that 78 was the first day head I saw on the aft deck, and I was wowed by it. It turned out really nice.
Sure.
When I'm building a boat for a client, I say we're semi-custom because I reserve the right to say no to bad ideas.
Sure.
I'm going to help you through these ideas, and if they're really bad, I got to say no.
And there was a few bad ideas for sure. There was.
But that's funny. So I asked you a question, but your takeaway was 100% because you realized that they were bad ideas.
Yes.
That's the struggle sometimes, is when people don't realize that they're bad ideas.
Well, I find that that's really a key element of the client, broker, captain, or consultant that needs to really be understood. And I feel that we were so successful with that build because I knew exactly how the client used the boat.
Right.
And what specifically that client was, what the wish for how they were going to use the boat.
So if you're not willing to wait and you don't know what you want, it's really easy to buy a used one, come up with that list,
That's
and
right.
then you know what you want.
For sure.
And you're not waiting because you already have one.
For sure. And this client did not want to wait. Literally, we kept that 70 until the 78 was delivered, and we pulled it, up to a dock and pulled the 70 right up next to it. We rafted off and moved the stuff from the 70 into the 78.
And her resale experience, purchase price on 70 to resale, I have no idea what it was. I don't remember. I could look it up. But
Right.
How was that? Was she happy?
Yeah, she was happy. I mean, it took longer than expected. This was, that particular timing of that was right after 2008 and the real estate burst. So the little real estate market burst, the downturn to the market. So it took a little bit longer than she expected, but it was what it was.
Were there any other extenuating circumstances that may have delayed the resale of that vessel?
Yeah, well, yeah. She was a chain smoker. She loved to drink and loved to smoke cigarettes.
She only did it outside, though, right?
Yeah. Not on the 70. On the 70, this owner wanted it because it was hers and she was going to do what she wanted to. So she smoked inside the 70, and it was.
I think it took us a month. I think Rod and I were involved. That was before we were brokers.
It took a long time to get the smoke out of that boat.
But we eventually got the smoke out, and eventually we found buyers, and no one complained about smoke smell again.
Yeah, and fortunately, for the boat and for the captain, on the 78, by the time it got there, she had developed some health issues where she needed oxygen. And so because of that, I was able to convince her that she was not allowed to smoke in the new boat, but she could step out onto the aft deck. So we had little oxygen generators and oxygen lines all over the place. And so she would, step outside, hang the oxygen line on the door as she walked outside, go outside and smoke until she couldn't breathe anymore, and then she'd get the oxygen line back in.
The things we do to ourselves.
I know, but just the funnest person that you could ever imagine.
She was awesome.
I mean,
I remember
great.
the pillow over the settee in the salon. You remember what it said? My recollection of it is something like, what part of y'all don't you understand, or something like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
I have a picture of it somewhere.
Yeah, her, very much, from Georgia, Southern Belle. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Yep.
What part of y'all don't you understand?
Yep, that's what it was.
Yeah. So she, a terrific lady for sure.
Awesome lady. And I remember her last rendezvous. She made a point to be there, and it was special. I think we sat at the table with her, with you, and it was a great event. Anything else you want to add on how you got into the industry?
Well, just that, the same thing, by the grace of God, I met her and she kind of introduced me to that. And because of my proximity, St. Petersburg to Bradenton, living in St. Pete, Bradenton being here with Marlow, I developed great relationships with everybody at Marlow, which has kind of helped me with a leg up, if you would, into the big boat world. When we went from that 55 Californian, which is a big boat, but it was nothing compared to that 70-foot Marlow. Right. I mean, I felt like I was going from a Volkswagen Bug to suddenly I've made it. I'm like, how did this happen? I'm like, wow. So now I'm in this 70, and then, by happenstance, because of my relationships that I built with other people and, the networking ability.
It's the Marlow family.
It is.
I know that you were her family member.
Sure.
Because you were the captain. I see that with a lot of our owners where they have a captain. They become family.
Sure.
And if you don't know it yet, if you build a new boat with us, your broker's going to become part of your family. There's a lot of conversations that happen during the build and after the build and during the orientation process where we truly are family. We'll answer the phone any time of night you call.
Right.
That's what we do. And then after your career with that owner ended, you continued in the Marlow family. So how many Marlows do you figure you've run since those first two?
It's certainly well over 100. Mm-hmm. I've run almost, every Marlow that comes through the yard. Just, when I say run, it could be just as much as taking it from this dock over to another dock because the customer needs it moved. Mm-hmm. So I've had an opportunity to run a bunch of different Marlows, and then I've probably run 15 over the years, serious trips, meaning, all right, take this up the East Coast. So take the boat from Sarasota to Cape Cod, take the boat from here to the Bahamas, take the boat from the Bahamas to the Mid-Atlantic. So, lots of miles on Marlows for sure.
And how many different brand yachts do you figure? So we got 100 Marlows. We understand that. How many different brands would you add to that mix to talk about your experience to contrast what these are versus what else is out there?
Right. So in the big boat world, 6 to 8 different brands. In yachts or boats in general, well over 20. From the center consoles to Grady Whites to Hydrosports to Yellowfins to Intrepids, whatever it is. Yeah, for sure.
And we're on a 66 Marlow today named Magic that's for sale. Late model, super clean boat. We actually took the boat in trade because the owner decided to build a new, bigger Marlow.
Right.
If this 66 was available at that time, what do you see as different from I'm going to call it the older 70, because we have a Gen 170, we have a Gen 270.
Of course.
That's very different. And then we have the bigger boat, which is the 78, which today would be the 80. I will spill my opinion first. The 66 is my favorite size because it's got a big boat interior without the big boat exterior, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I can have 4 cabins in it. I can have, up to 3,000 gallons fuel capacity. I can have room for 2 crew or 3 crew down there. I can go fast. I can go far. I can do what I want. I believe in the 66 Marlow so much I owned one. What's your opinion of this boat as an example? How many 66s do you figure you've run? I would call it the perfect boat for a cruising couple if you want to take more people with you. If you don't, you can go smaller for sure. But this really gives you almost everything of the bigger boat without having to go bigger on the dockway.
Absolutely. Yeah, the 66 is really kind of the sweet spot in the Marlow lineup. When you really start taking a look at the boats, from the things that you just said, it's a big boat inside of a smaller boat footprint, because you have enough room to have the 4 staterooms. You have enough room in this boat to have the extra fuel, which becomes really important when you're heading down to the Caribbean, or if you're trying to get real far out east, going into the Bay of Fundy or in Newfoundland, any of those areas. Fuel becomes very important. But even if you're not going that far afield, being able to cruise a long ways without having to stop is a huge benefit to the 3,000 gallon fuel capacity. There's many boats that I've run over the years that don't have that capacity, and I can go fast, but the only thing I can't pass is a fuel dock, because if there's a decent fuel stop, I've got to go in, for sure. So that really limits the length of time that you can spend actually doing what you want to do. Because there's many times where fueling is zero on the fun scale.
You haven't said your east-west yet, furthest points. But I'd like to ask that question, then I'd like to give Rod a chance to ask you some questions. But in your east-west or your north-south, however you want to figure it, let's pretend it was this boat, the 66 Magic we're on. How much more limited would you be in those trips? Just put yourself in 3,000 we've got aboard, but let's say you only had 1,000. So tell me where you went and how maybe you couldn't have done that trip, or it would have taken longer, or all the things that are in your head as to how that 1/3 fuel capacity,
for sure,
which is what a lot of our competitors have.
It's a game changer. It's a total game changer, because I had one client that came from commercial fishing, came from lobstering, all of that kind of stuff, and speed wasn't the thing, but distance was the thing. Being able to take the boat and go a long ways. So 3,000 gallons, I can leave Fort Lauderdale and go to Nantucket. One tank of fuel. I don't have to stop. That means I just have to take enough crew. I've got to have enough provisions to do 6 days, and I'm going to be in Nantucket.
And how would you run? Would that be fast, slow, a mix of it?
Slow. Okay. So we're just going to leave and go slow, and we're going to be in Nantucket, or we can continue on up towards.
So I could have a sailboater on watching this right now, thinking that you're talking about 3 knots.
Oh, no, I'm talking
or
9
5
knots.
knots. Okay,
no,
9 knots is slow?
9 knots is slow.
Okay.
That's my typical goal, is really the theoretical hull speed of that particular vessel. So I'm taking a look at what is square root, waterline length, and then multiplying that to get my hull speed. And then I'm taking that and comparing it to my engine gauges and my throttles, making sure that I'm using just about 1 pound of boost in the turbos. That's giving me my most efficient slow cruise speed. So I'm tying all those numbers together to go, okay, this is the sweet spot, if you would, for my low end cruise. And then we would do that and go 5 or 6 days. 5.5 days is really what we would take from Lauderdale to Nantucket, or we were going into Newport, or even into the Connecticut side, Stonington, Connecticut, that kind of stuff.
I had one client I sold a used Marlow to, who was still the CEO of his company that he started. So he was limited on time,
right,
but not limited on resources and fun.
Sure.
And for a birthday, they went to Nantucket on a lobster run and came back 3 weeks later. Fort Lauderdale to Nantucket, lobster run and back.
Right.
Just had the best 3-week vacation they could have.
Sure.
They didn't run slow much.
Right. No, for sure. But, to your point about the distance, if I have 1,000-gallon capacity and I do the same exact speed, I've got to stop in Beaufort, North Carolina. Right. If not, back
and
it up.
What time you going to be there? What time can you leave? What does that delay?
Is the fuel dock open? Do they have fuel? What's the weather? I mean, weather's always a factor, but, going in and coming back out, takes a whole lot of time, especially if we're going slow. Okay, let's run fast. Well, now I'm burning 80 gallons an hour, 100 gallons an hour. So there's, just huge advantages to having the ability. Doesn't mean that you have to carry 3,000 gallons, but if I have the ability to, I want to be able to do that when I can. I want the ability to go fast when I can go fast, or I can stay slow just because, time isn't the key element.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. There's a huge advantage to that 3,000 gallons.
And then the east-west pins?
Uh-huh.
What would you say?
So going out to the islands, the Caribbean, going out to Bahamas, that kind of stuff. And west would be Catalina.
Okay.
San Diego, Long Beach, all of that kind of stuff, out towards Catalina.
How different is it? Like
way different.
So different that the boat doesn't also work there?
No. The boat works great there.
Why?
Because it has range.
Okay.
It has sea keeping ability, because the swells are huge. A normal day there is, 9-foot seas, 9 to 11-foot seas, but they're like 12 seconds apart. So it's like an elevator ride up and down. But, so it's this huge swell, but, you're like, oh, okay. But the boat is so solid that, you're like, oh, it's like an elevator ride. It doesn't change pitch at all. It just rides up and back down.
How about direction?
No, perfect. Well, the strut keels really are a huge thing with Marlow, allowing for the track.
But you can get those in any boat, right?
Strut keels? No, you can get a keel, but you it's hard to get those twin strut keels that look like an F-16. If you turn the boat upside down, it look like two fins. Those strut keels are key because they vector the thrust. And whether you're going forwards or backwards, it holds the boat. It lets the boat track straight.
But you can't tell a difference. If I took 5 boats out that weren't Marlows and a Marlow, when I went on the identical ride, identical sea, an owner wouldn't be able to tell a difference, right?
For sure they would.
Why?
Well, because when the back of the boat starts to slide around, I've run a lot of different boats. Sport boats, cruisers, express boats, sport fishing boats, especially boats that are designed to get up on a full plane and run fast. Those boats have a flat aft section. And if you get into a following sea, which happens almost every afternoon coming into the inlet, the sun is in your face, the waves are, breaking, the tide's coming out, the sea breeze is coming in, and you get these big waves coming in. And when the bow falls off the wave and it starts to slow down, we've all been in that situation where I'm doing, 20, 25 knots, and now I'm doing 18 knots because I'm pushing up onto the next wave. The wave from behind me starts to lift the back end of the boat. And if you've ever had it start to slide sideways or the boat start to snap hook, that's because it doesn't have strut keels. Mm-hmm. And I am telling you, it's an uneasy feeling. I have had a very big sport fish boat snap hook 90 degrees to starboard, and I thought that I was coming out of the helm chair. And I'm an awfully big boy to throw out of a helm chair.
So I may have told this story on our last one, but it's so good I'm going to tell it again. I'm going to tell it short just in case. New 66 Marlow coming out of the boat show. Owner wanted to go out. It was nasty. Nobody else was going out but another 120. I'm like, okay, fine, let's go. He was a merchant mariner. He said he could take it. We go out. It was rough. We turn left, going north, okay? Paced with the same boat the whole entire way. We happened to both turn into the same inlet, okay? Turn into the same inlet. He was in closer to me, so he went first. Got that 120-footer, exactly what you're saying, completely sideways in the inlet. I was worried about him hitting either side, okay?
Right.
I'm slowing down, but the waves are going, so I got to kind of keep a little bit of forward movement. He got it just enough that I could go around him. And me and the new owner are just looking at him waving like, what happened to you, man? We're totally fine. Just cruising right in here. And it is because of the strut keels. I asked you some questions I knew the answers to, but it really helps the boat track on rails.
For sure.
The shortest distance from point A to point B is a straight line, and you can do that in these boats in rough conditions because of the extra traction you've got in the stern.
Sure.
For sure.
Would you say that's one of the things that separates the Marlows more, from the rest, right? Is that one of the biggest things that you would say?
It's definitely one of the biggest things. The ability to track straight in almost any kind of sea. I use that qualifier, if you would, because I can get into something and make it do it, but for the most part, for sure, those strut keels are gonna keep me straight. That the ability for the boat to be kind of all weathered, I can take it in anything, and for sure I'm going to give up before the boat does.
Is that true for any size Marlows? I know you've ran everything from the 49 up to the 97.
Respective of the size of the boat, for sure. So if I'm running a 49 or a 53, I've got a different weather criteria than I would for the 97 or 100. Obviously, longer water line, bigger beam, the different, systems that are on board, all of those things certainly take, factor into the equation. But, for sure, size per size, the Marlow outpaces, a lot of the other manufacturers because of those strut keels. That just helps a lot.
Okay.
For sure.
One thing I wanted to ask you is, obviously you have a lot of experience, not just with Marlows, but with other brands, and you've been involved in a couple of Marlow builds. You currently run a lot of them. If you had to pick, let's say, 3 to 5 must-have upgrades that you and your clients have really appreciated on the Marlows, what would you say they are?
The upgrades would be, especially lately, some of the newer things that we've done are the 0-speed stabilization.
Okay.
They have some new things that have come out lately that really keep the boat feeling very steady. Sitting still at the dock, sitting still at anchor, all of it is that comfort level is a huge plus to guest and family.
Have you mostly run the gyro versions or the fin versions?
Yes.
You've run both?
Yes.
Do you have a preference of which one you prefer?
Fins.
Me too.
Sure.
I didn't know the answer to that, but I don't have an elephant somewhere on the boat, weight-wise and space-wise.
Right.
I like that they seem to also be more effective underway because they're a little bit bigger inherently.
Right.
And then you're not paying twice for 2 systems.
Correct.
You've got one system and it works when you're not moving 2. And I've even used it in a slip.
I've used it in a
I was on the Tennessee River, going up to Chattanooga, and I don't know if it was 4th of July or what, but there was like a highway of boats next to us. We had no breakwater or in the slip. All we did was we just made sure we snugged it up kind of in the middle, right, so that they didn't kick anything, and we had a great day. I think we were there for 2 days. Great time on the boat.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we go, Rod, you asked a question earlier about, teaching people how to run a boat. And, when I start teaching, I'm teaching, I'm teaching an owner and their partner, whether that's their wife, whether that's their brother, whoever that is that wants to learn to run the boat together, or separately. But, talking about, their family and their guest and all of that. And I try to make sure that they understand that, okay, this may be their dream. This is what they've always wanted to do, but it may not be your family's dream. So we need to make sure that your family and friends are comfortable, because then they're going to start to share and understand that dream. Your dream may be to cruise, 2,000 miles and let's go offshore and we're going to rough it.
Solo on a sailboat.
That's right. We're going to do this, and that's what I've always wanted to do. And you can do that on a Marlow. But, if you're going to take someone who may not share in that dream, we need to make sure that that person feels safe and comfortable, because there's 3 words that I have found that have gotten people out of boating faster than any other 3 words, and it's she didn't like it. Okay, well then we need to make sure that she likes it. So how we plan an itinerary, how we plan a build, everything that we're doing isn't just for the safety of the vessel, but also for the creature comforts involved, to make sure that my family and friends can share in that dream. And that's really a part of teaching. So when I'm teaching someone, how to run a boat, how to use things, how to set up lines and docks and fenders, and how I'm going to do this, I always try to go into it, but we're trying to explain this whole feeling, whole lifestyle that we're trying to, bring people into, to share in your dream. Because most of the time, if people are in this level of boating, they have that dream. They already have a sense of what they like. But if we're going to introduce others in the family so that we can share in this experience, which is what they're trying to do, I need to make sure that they understand that it needs to not be so scary for those people who don't have this same dream. And I try to always go at this, when I'm teaching others, because it's easy to get lost in the terminology, in the worlds of, lines. Is this the tag end of a line and loop into the line? Is this a housel? People get confused in forward spring, aft spring. So language. So I always try to, communicate to people and understand that, this is all an elective, and it's not their job to understand me, but my job to be understood. So when I'm talking to people, I'm reading body language, I'm reading their reactions and their questions. Because if I don't feel that they understand it, I need to repackage the information in a way that they understand it. To answer your question earlier.
And that's exactly right. You actually helped me quite a bit with a couple. This is probably going back 3 or 4 years. He wanted a bigger boat, but she did not feel comfortable going with a bigger boat because of the size. It was going to be overwhelming. And one of the key things for her was, well, we're going to have bigger lines. And she was a little thing, right? She said, I'm not sure if I can handle these bigger lines. And one of the things that you helped out with quite a bit was he would run the boat all the time, except for when they were docking.
Correct.
And she would be the one to dock the boat, because she said, if you want the bigger boat, I will dock the boat. You're going to have to do the lines.
Correct.
Right. And that was the deciding factor in going from a much smaller boat, somewhere in the 50-foot range, to a 70 Marlow.
Right.
So you really made that dream, happen, because that's what he wanted, just by teaching her how to dock the boat and just help her get comfortable with the overall size.
Sure. For sure.
I'd like to invite you to go on a boat ride with us today. Let's take this beautiful Marlow out, do some drone shots, some photo shots. And since we have an opportunity to leave the dock, my assistant's here. Would you mind maybe giving her some instruction on lines, and maybe we can record that?
Absolutely.
I think it'd
For
be
sure.
fun. I could use it as a benefit. Sometimes I'm running a boat for a listing and I bring her with me, and I'm a one-armed bandit. I'm doing it all.
Right.
It would be nice to have somebody with some more instruction on lines, and who better than you since we're here?
Happy to.
That'd be cool.
Happy to.
Okay. So you covered the options already. What's your favorite part of the job? I could sit here and talk about for 10 hours about my favorite things, but you're the guest today. What are your favorite things? What is it that keeps you coming back?
Really, my personality is I'm a variety person. So I like, different places in the world. I like going different places. I like meeting different people. The reasons why we tell people, oh, well, you can buy a boat. What's nice about buying a yacht is that you can own a boat, and if you don't like your neighbors, you can get rid of the lines and go to the next place. Well, that's me. I'm really, I like, the variety, going to different places, meeting different people, not just sitting in one spot, but being able to go around and see all kinds of different people, run different boats, interact with different clients. So I'm really that variety type person. That's my favorite part about the job is that, yesterday, here I am today in Florida, enjoying, beautiful weather and sitting on some boat on a beautiful yacht, talking to two great friends of mine. And yesterday I was up in Long Island Sound fighting, rough weather and, wind and possible hail and a tornado warning. That wasn't as much fun as this, but it was exciting.
It was exciting.
It was exciting. So.
Yeah. So when you talk about, I don't like my neighbors, cut the lines, move. I'm sitting here thinking about, I've got a neighbor that, I'm really good friends with. I have a neighbor I don't talk to much, but it'd be really nice because all my stuff's at my house and I live in the woods and I love living in the woods because I talk to people all the time, right?
Sure.
But, sometimes when I'm home and it's nice to be in the woods, but I really wish I could just take my house and put it right there for the weekend.
Right.
It'd be really nice. Hey, because then I got the beach, I got
Right.
the ocean, I got everything.
Sure.
And in a yacht, you can do that. All your stuff's there, and you can really. Rod talked about last time about chasing 75. It could be weather, it could be neighbors, it could be whatever, but your
Right.
stuff's with you, and you can go, and that's part of the adventure. I mean,
Sure.
300 years ago it was a lot more dangerous to do what we're doing today, and we're
Right.
so lucky that we can do what we do in this safe environment.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of technology that makes it a lot easier than maybe two people looking at one of these boats understand until they've had our orientation and
Sure.
learn. And what I do with my customers when they buy a boat from me or my clients, whatever we want to identify as, is I like to spend 2 or 3 days with them doing orientation, and then I'm there for the phone. But eventually, I got to get back in the office and help my next client, right? And then we hand off to somebody like Tad, and we did that recently for a couple. And
Sure.
I still get phone calls, you still get phone calls,
Sure,
so
absolutely.
it's great to hear that the adventure is part of what you love because that's really kind of what we offer. Hey, this is where they are. This is where they need to go. Help them get there and figure it out so
Right.
that when you get off, they're safer than when you got aboard.
Sure. Absolutely.
That's awesome. So what else, what else is it besides the adventure that maybe something Marlow specific that maybe you can't get somewhere else that you like?
Well, it's such a beautiful boat that, you can't help but, you got to like being the envy of the dock. Right. I mean, so, I get to be that captain that everybody walks up to and goes, "Oh, that's such a beautiful boat. Is that yours?" And I go, "Nope, but I'm fortunate enough to drive it." And they're like, "So you're the lucky one. You get to play with the toy, but not write the check." And I went, "Exactly." And I said, that's a fun part of the job is just being able to share those experiences with, with my family, because most of the owners are like, yeah, if you, want to bring your wife, bring your daughter, so I get to share those experiences with my family as well. And, Marlow owners, I am biased, I do a lot of Marlows, but Marlow owners in particularly, are, they're doers. And I equate this to I've run big boats, charter operations, all of that kind of stuff where your clients or your owners are what we call the ice cube crowd. That means that if you hear the ice cube shaking in the glass, they want another drink. So we've got to have staff on hand to make sure that that drink is taken care of. And Marlow owners are a little bit different. Marlow owners are typically people who want to do all of the stuff themselves. They, they want to.
Nobody can make a drink better than me, so I'll make it for myself.
Or they'll make the drink for you. If I'm sitting here most of the time, they're like, "Oh, let me get you another drink," and I'm like, "Yeah, let me get it for you. I'm the one that you're hiring," and they're like, "No, here we'll do it." So they're really kind of hands-on.
Family. It comes back to family.
For sure. And so that's really, probably the neatest part is that interaction, being able to step in to a situation with a new boat owner or someone I'm doing orientation with. And, 15 minutes later, I feel like I'm part of the family.
And I think you'll agree with me when I say the Marlows, you call them doers, a lot of them are owner operators, right? They like to run their own boat. They like to do it.
For sure.
Can you speak a little bit to how easy it is to access? Because we were talking about this the other day. How accessible everything is for serviceability, for maintenance.
Sure. Well, I mean, you put it perfectly when you said the word serviceability. I mean, the boats are laid out. They're really built to be owner operated. They are really designed for that. especially from the 66, down to the 53. So in that slot, those boats are really designed for that. The systems are so intuitive, if you would. It doesn't take years of experience to be able to get into something and work on it. The parts availability to the aftermarket systems that aren't Marlow parts, but they are, a particular electronics dealer or brand, a particular engine brand. All of them are very easy to communicate with. Marlow does a great job at selecting those vendors, not just based on the quality of their products, but based on the quality of their customer service, because they know that most of these boats are owner operated. And if that's the case, I'm going to have an owner calling, to get service or to get some help with something. And if, as an owner, you feel like, I'm calling the cable guy and I've got to wait for 5 hours to get a response, that doesn't work. So, those kind of things are a very unique touch that Marlow puts into their builds. The serviceability, the maintenance that needs to go into something that is so system laden as a yacht, that awareness to those kind of details is what sets, the Marlows apart from being able to, from a supply chain issue coming out of the pandemic. And, that was everyone's excuse for what feels like ever was supply chain issues to, okay, I'm able to get parts that can fit in what I need them to be in. It's not something that, that I need to go to a specific yard to get fixed.
So they don't have to bring the boat back.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No. You don't have to bring it back here. I mean, the yard here has true artists that work in the yard that can create unbelievable things. The same things that were created when the boat was built. They've been able to do things. I've had custom handrails made because an owner didn't like the way a handrail went down the stair. And, the artists here at Marlow were unbelievable. You couldn't tell that we had refabricated that rail. But that being said, the nice thing about the Marlow is that it's normalized to a point that the serviceability can be done in any qualified service yard. It's not so proprietary, if you would, that, they can't work on the shafts. Nope, the shafts can be pulled out at any particular yard that needs to, because anything that is specific to that boat comes with it, for sure.
Would that be one of your favorite things about
Absolutely,
Marlow?
for sure.
What would be?
Makes your life easier as a captain.
Yeah, for sure.
As a captain, that's important.
And an owner, yeah.
That I can take the boat to any competent yard, and they know what I'm talking about. If I can help them troubleshoot where they need to look for something, they can normally service it.
And what would be a couple other favorite things about the Marlow that you can't get anywhere else?
The family side of it is something that is paramount. We talk about this, and I know that there's a lot of other yacht companies that have that same kind of feel to it, but I can tell you firsthand that I've picked up the phone and called, specific Marlow people, be it you or Rod or anybody,
service team,
any of the
parts
service
department.
side. I've been able to pick up the phone and call them at 2 a.m. in the morning. I'm offshore and I've got an alarm going off and I don't know how to turn it off. And someone actually picks up the phone and answers my question. They may not know the answer, but they then find out the answer and actually call me back. So that's something that is quite unique in the fact that it's such a family type.
And that's only if we know you're buying a new boat, right?
No, for sure, because it's me. It's Captain Tad. Hey, Captain Tad's not buying a boat, so for sure, it's just out of their willingness to make it right. I do a lot of things for orientation, and typically the marching orders that I get from the service department is, please, try and break something. Let's find the broken things before the owner actually takes delivery of the boat. All we want is it to be 100% perfect. We know that it's not going to be 100% perfect. There's going to be something that somebody finds. But if we can try to find that, that's the behind the scenes stuff that the owners don't normally see. And that's a unique thing.
That's one thing that we do as brokers. Those of us who are
Sure.
captains or run the boat,
Sure.
from the offload point until
Right.
we give you the keys, we are making a list every single time to try to make sure that there's zero,
Right.
on the punch list or squawk
Sure.
list or whatever it is you want. That's our goal. So, all right, you talked about, the network, the serviceability. What else would be something? We already talked about the strut keels. Is there
Right.
anything else that you feel that you get at Marlow that you can't get anywhere else as an owner, as a captain, as a guest aboard a boat?
Right. Well, the ability of the boat to, do slow really well and to be able to get up and go. So the combination, the hybrid part of it is probably the biggest thing that most people really enjoy about a Marlow. I talked about being the envy of the dock and people walking down the dock and talking to you.
That doesn't ever happen though.
It happens every time I'm at a dock.
So give me some statistics. So you buy an ugly boat, how often do they come to you? You buy a Marlow, how often do they come to you?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, if I'm in a mass produced kind of run of the mill punch it out kind of boat.
I think someone has described them very well as wedding cakes.
Yes.
Meaning if it looks like it's white and we got one layer and a smaller layer and a smaller
Right.
layer. Okay?
For sure. You'll get a wave or that kind of stuff. When I'm in a Marlow, it's a classic looking yacht. People come in, they look at it. Now it does look like a trawler. And so I get comments all the time. And the thing that, I was talking about, the ability to go slower, the ability to go fast. I love telling the stories of people come up and they go, so, where'd you guys come from today? Because normally I'm on delivery coming from somewhere. And, I'm in,
200 miles away.
That's right. I left, I left Fort Lauderdale and now I'm in Charleston. Well, that's almost 300 miles. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, you did that today? I went, yeah, we left at 4 a.m. and it's, 8 p.m. now. And they're like, well, how fast do you go? And I'm like, they were thinking 9 knots was top, 9, 10 knots. No, we were cruising at 18 to 20.
What's the fastest you've been in a Marlow?
29 knots.
34 for me.
Yeah.
The new
29
70
knots.
with the big C-32s.
It's funny because the new, it was a 97, so a big Marlow with C-32.
When that boat was brand new, I saw 31.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you must have had a couple thousand pounds of stuff on it.
Well, yeah. Yeah,
So you've run 100 Marlows, okay? I know you've run some pretty fancy boats outside of Marlow.
Sure.
I'm going to try not to use names or people.
Sure.
Where they had complicated, because if you guys remember from our last video, I own a service company. So sometimes when a client would break something, they'd call me, I'd show up, and we'd try to figure out how to fix it. I remember one time we showed up because on the aft, I think it was the aft starboard side of this vessel, there was a breaker panel and what looked like an iPad on the wall. And that iPad ran everything, and it was great when it was working. But for whatever reason that day, it was dark or the buttons weren't working. Did that only limit the access to the iPad, or did that affect you anywhere else?
Yeah, so I've had similar situations with that kind of stuff where it's nice when it works. I mean, I've had all electronic, all touch button. Touch this button and it turns this system on and that system on, meaning it automatic switches. It turns on breakers and relays and all of that stuff. The issue becomes when that doesn't work. Where is the physical, mechanical side to that? And I had that happen on a very well-known brand that had very nice engines, that had a relay that went down that shut down the entire boat. When I say the whole boat, it shut down the engines, it shut down the steering, pod drives, all of it.
So if that was
all of it,
if that was an owner-operated vessel and they were in Tortola, what skills would you need to have to fix that?
A really good sat phone and a really long piece of anchor chain, because you need to anchor and then you need to call someone to come tow you.
Right. So on 100 Marlows, right? You know that we don't have, and I'm making the term up. There isn't an iPad-based system, but I'm oversimplifying it to say computer-based that touches everything electronically downstream. have you had anything like that on a Marlow occur on the 100 boats that you've run? Because, we do it different. We kind of make it so that owner operator, once he's orientated, knows where the switch is, knows where the fuse is, knows where the battery is, knows where the off switch is. So if that still happened in Tortola, he's got a fighting chance of getting himself out of that situation.
Correct.
Maybe turning that one piece of equipment off because he doesn't have the means to fix it. But does that affect the rest of the boat?
No, for sure not. Marlow's, when you go back and you look at the history of Marlow's and you look at the history of David Marlow, he came from cruising. He came from, commercial fishing boats, competitive sailboats, cruising, long-range trawlers. So when you look at the design of the systems, the redundancy and the serviceability of those systems, all of that was designed with those from that set of experiences.
That point of view.
It didn't come from what's the newest, greatest toy. It came from a point of view of, okay, that's all well and good, but what happens when it breaks?
What keeps me boating?
That's right. And that is really kind of at the heart of every build of a Marlow, is that, okay, this is great, this is wonderful, but, how can we carve this system out but still keep the boat running? And that, redundancy of being able, how do we do that really does kind of speak to why the boat is so popular.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay. Rod, do you have anything else that you'd like to ask
No,
Captain Tad while he's here?
As always, I learn a thing or two from Captain Tad every time we meet.
Yeah.
So
Well, what I would
appreciate your
like to
time.
do is I would like to find our girls, have you teach them how to get us off this boat. Let's get off the dock, okay? Meaning, let's start the boat up. Let's get off the dock. Let's film you teaching these girls. And then let's go for a ride. We got to do some video and photo shoot today of this boat for some marketing. Maybe we sit right back down here and talk while we're going. I mean, we'll figure all that out. I would like to take a second to invite some more guests on our show. We've had a lot of interaction from the last one.
Sure.
A lot of interaction, which is all positive. So this is good. This could grow. Who knows? But I would like to. I'm going to start off with our celebrity guest list because the last time the three of us were on your 78 Marlow that I can remember, we were with Howard Stern, Sharon Osbourne, and Howie Mandel. So obviously, I'd like to invite them to join us if they'd like to
come
come
on
again.
down. Come on down. Yeah, we had a great time on that particular day.
Let's put a photo up here so people can see it.
We'll put a photo up. There was a shooting of America's Got Talent in downtown St. Petersburg, and the entertainment committee that was hosting that at the Bayfront Center in downtown St. Pete said what would be really great is if we brought the judges in by boat. And so they were looking for an impressive big boat in St. Petersburg, and they happened to know that this 78-foot Marlow was, in the harbor, and they knew who the owner was, called the owner called me and said, hey, if you would take care of this. And so we did that photo shoot and brought in Sharon Osbourne, Howie Mandel, and Howard Stern into America's Got Talent, went right up next to it. Thousands of people on the shore waving and screaming, and the celebrities were standing up there. It was a fun time. That was a good day.
That was a great day for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I'd also like to invite some of our marine finance specialists and insurance specialists because I believe this format allows you to educate. And I think somebody that is going to spend multi-million dollars on a yacht like this should be well informed. So that's part of our goal. In addition to getting to know the team and to know the captains, I would also like to invite some more of our team members from Marlow. I know one of our brokers has a yacht channel, the New Yachtsman, I believe is the channel. I'd like to get him on here. And then maybe some of our project management staff. I've had some requests for that. So there's your invitation. Let's make it happen.
Awesome.
All right. Do you guys have any parting comments?
No, just appreciate your time, Cam.
That's right.
Yeah.
Keep boating.
I appreciate your time.
All
Thank you
right,
for being
thanks.
here. Let's go yachting.
Let's go boating.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us at Everything Yachting. I hope you've enjoyed diving into the yachting world today. If you've enjoyed or learned something, please subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for more. Until next time, my friends, healthy families, happy memories, and may fair winds and smooth seas guide your future yachting adventures.